They say there are places where the past clings to the earth like mist, where echoes of old things still live. I grew up in Nkpolo, a village on the edge of Ode Ikom Forest, a forest so ancient it was here long before our ancestors. The trees there grow so close together they block out the sun. Their roots thick and knotted like old veins, making the forest floor a twisted mess of shadows. From childhood, I'd heard tales of the forest. My grandmother was the village's storyteller, and in her deep, raspy voice, she spun webs of stories about spirits, demons, and the strange happenings that seemed to ripple out from Ode Ikom. She told us of children lured by ghostly cries, of travelers who went in and never returned. She told me of Ajoma, spirits of the damned, who never left their realm, but instead waited for those foolish enough to enter theirs. They don't want blood, Nnamdi, she would say. They want company. To the people of Nkpolo, Ode Ikom was sacred, yet feared. Men wouldn't even look directly at the trees when they passed it, as if they might accidentally catch the eye of something watching from within. The forest had its own rules passed down from generation to generation, spoken only in whispers. No one went inside without an offering, and no one, no matter how curious, dared to explore its depths alone. But like most young men, I was restless, convinced the tales were just superstitions meant to keep us in check. The forest called to me. I felt it, a pull that I couldn't explain, a whisper that I felt rather than heard. It was as if the silence of the forest was inviting me, daring me to cross the boundary. So one night, just as the last light of day faded and shadows draped the village, I grabbed my camera, tucked a few dried kola nuts into my bag as a weak offering, and set off towards Ode Ikom. I told myself it was just a forest. I would be back before the sun rose, and by then I'd have proof that all the stories were nothing but old fables. The air grew colder as I neared the forest edge, and with every step, the noises of the village faded until there was nothing but silence. The kind of silence that presses on you, heavy as if the world itself were holding its breath. I paused at the boundary, looking up at the towering trees, their dark branches twisting together, forming a canopy that swallowed the night sky. My stomach churned as I took my first step into Ode Ikom. The ground was soft, thick with layers of fallen leaves that seemed to muffle my footsteps. The scent of wet earth and decay filled the air, mixing with something bitter, a smell that was almost metallic. The deeper I went, the colder it became, until I was shivering. My camera felt heavy in my hand, but I held onto it like a lifeline, my only connection to the world I'd left behind. The forest seemed to close in around me, the trees pressing closer together. Their bark was scarred, poked with strange symbols that looked like faces frozen in horror. And as I walked, I began to hear things, a faint rustling, soft whispers that I couldn't quite make out. They floated through the trees, with wisps of smoke curling around me, wrapping me in a cocoon of sound. Then I heard it, a voice, faint but unmistakable, whispering my name. Nnamdi. The sound sent a chill down my spine. It was impossible. No one knew I was here. I spun around expecting to see someone, but there was nothing. Just shadows shifting between the trees. I took a shaky breath and reminded myself that fear was the only enemy here. But as I turned back to the path, the whisper came again, closer this time. Nnamdi. My skin prickled and I clutched the kola nuts in my pocket. The offering was supposed to protect me, but somehow I felt more vulnerable than ever. The voices grew louder, overlapping, becoming a chaotic murmur that seemed to echo from every direction. It felt like dozens, maybe hundreds of voices, all pleading, accusing, and something else, something almost like anger. The whispers led me deeper into the forest, like a moth drawn to the flame. Each step felt heavier, as if the forest itself was trying to keep me from turning back. My legs felt leading, my heartbeat pounding in my ears as I stumbled over roots and ducked under low branches. The darkness grew thicker, swallowing my flashlight's weak beam, leaving only the eerie glow of my camera's viewfinder. As I stepped into a small clearing, I froze. At the far end of the clearing stood an Obra shrine, an ancient altar left untouched, covered in a layer of moss so thick it looked it had grown into the earth itself. Around it were wooden carvings, figures twisted into unnatural shapes, faces contorted in agony. The shrine looked forgotten, abandoned, yet somehow it felt alive, watching me with a silent, malevolent gaze. Then, out of the silence came a sound that made my blood run cold. It was a low, guttural moan, like the sound of someone trying to scream, but with no air to push the sound. The noise grew louder, filling the air, echoing off the trees until it was a chorus of pain, a symphony of agony. My breath caught as a figure emerged from the shadows near the shrine. It was barely visible, more a shape than a person, a shadow with hollow eyes that stared straight through me. It moved slowly, its head tilted as if examining me, and then it spoke. A voice, a rasping whisper that seemed to scrape against my ears. Return what was taken. The words echoed through the clearing, filling my mind, reverberating off the trees. I wanted to turn and run, but my feet were rooted to the spot, held in place by a terror so deep it felt like a part of me. The shadows drew closer, its hollow eyes boring into mine, and I felt something cold wrap around my wrist, a touch that burned like ice, filling me with a fear I'd never known. I wrenched my arm free, stumbling backward, and in that moment, the shadow vanished, melting back into the darkness. But the whispers remained, filling the air, growing louder, more desperate. They were everywhere, surrounding me, echoing off the trees until they formed a single, chilling message. You cannot leave. Panic gripped me, and I turned, stumbling back the way I had come. But the forest seemed to shift around me, twisting and turning, the path disappearing beneath my feet. The trees loomed overhead, their branches reaching down like skeletal hands, snagging my clothes, scratching my skin. I felt something cold wrap around my ankle, like a hand reaching up from the earth, pulling me back. I kicked and twisted, freeing myself, and bolted forward. My only thought, to escape. The whispers chased me, growing louder, filling my head with words I couldn't understand, words that seemed like a warning and a curse. Finally, I broke through the tree line, stumbling out into the village, panting, trembling. But even then, the voices didn't leave me. They were in my head, a quiet, insistent murmur that would not let me go. And as I looked back at Ode Ikom, I could have sworn I saw the shadows moving, watching, waiting. I knew then that I had been marked. Ode Ikom had let me leave, but it hadn't let me go. The whispers stayed with me, a haunting reminder that the forest was not done with me. I hadn't returned what it wanted, and I feared that one day it will come to claim it.